Morning, everyone, and um, I'm going to be playing a fairly long film. It's a compilation of loads of videos that I've done. It's a compilation with Ben in there. There's going to be a bit of music in it as well. Um, but basically, I'll be honest with you, I'm very concerned about the spiritual and political direction of our movement. Um, I believe we're at a time of we're at a crossroads in our movement, and we can go with what is good and what is right and what is spiritually righteous and what is right before God and what is right politically and what is right for the country. We can go down that road. Can everyone hear? Can you guys hear me? Can everyone hear me? Okay. For goodness sake. Hold on, guys. 1 2 1 2. 1 2 1 2. 1 2 1 2. 1 2 1 2. 1 2 1 2 1 2. So let me know if you can hear that at all, guys. One, two, 1 2. Can you hear me? Okay, guys. Fair enough, right? That's fine. Um, okay, I can't do anything about the volume. I haven't got time to mess about with it. Um, we can hear just a bit quiet. Okay. Right, guys. Well, look. Anyway, I think the issue that we're facing, the issue that we're facing in the country, and the issue that we're facing nationally is an issue of absolute crisis. We're in a complete crisis in the country. We're in a complete crisis in our movement, in my opinion. We're at a spiritual crossroads, and I think we've got to be extremely aware of what's going on. And guys, that's the volume turned right up. I'm going to try something. Works any better? How's that? Is that better? Is that better, guys? Okay. Right. Let's hope that works. Now That's going with the webcam mic. Okay, probably a bit tinny, but right. Let's leave it like that. Okay. Anyway, we're in a spiritual crisis. We're in a political crisis, and we've got to decide which way we go as a movement, as a people. I've been very clear. I believe that we've got racists and ethno-nats have infiltrated our movement extremely successfully. They've managed to set up their own party, and I am absolutely committed to the trajectory I'm on, and I'm not going to say any more about that. And this isn't about division. Sometimes you have to divide. You have to divide between good and evil. I've seen some of the most vile racist abuse against friends of mine in the last few days, and I've heard no condemnation, hardly any condemnation from certain political parties. And the only political party that to me is in the Goldilocks zone that is going to do anything for this country is Advance UK. I'm sticking to that. My colours are well and truly nailed to the mast. And let me say something here. I will stand on my own if I have to against 1,000 ethno-nats until they tear me limb from limb. And I'll still be scrabbing and biting and gouging as I go down, dying for what I believe in. Let me just put that very, very clearly on the record. I want nothing to do with ethno-nats. I want nothing to do with people that are so cowardly they won't even nail their colours to the mast and call themselves ethno-nats, but they cover it in the language of nativism. nativism. We're looking out for the indigenous people of the country. No, you are racists. That's not what you're about at all. You're about race. You're about ethnicity. That's not what our movement's about. It's not what I'm about. It's not what Tommy Robinson's ever been about either, incidentally. Okay? I'm not speaking for Tommy. Tommy speaks for himself. I speak for myself. But I will have nothing to do with ethno-nationalism. I'll have nothing to do with people that don't believe in democracy and want to appoint a dictator. I will have nothing to do with it. I never will. And I'm glad that Advance UK exists as a party, because I believe I will be vindicated in the fullness of time. Now, if the racists and the ethno-nats gain power, our country is finished. Our country is absolutely finished. But they're not going to gain power. But what they're going to do, they may well divide the country so badly that people on the right can never get elected in this country again. The stakes have never been higher. I've nailed my colours to the mast. I've taken so much flack for it. And I'm going to say something. See, to all you scumbags that are abusing me, abusing my family, telling lies about me, it doesn't bother me in the least. It doesn't bother me in the least, because I will stand, just like Martin Luther did when he nailed his 95 Theses to the wall of the church at Wittenberg. I will stand, and like him, I will stand there and I'll say, here I stand, I can do no other, so help me God. I know that we are in the Goldilocks zone. People that stand with me are in the Goldilocks zone. I'm not going to have anything to do with racism. I'm not going to have anything to do with race baiting of any kind, from any side. From Islamists, from Black Lives Matter people, and from white supremacists and ethno-nats, and people that call themselves nativists, and they know exactly who they are, playing very dangerous games. These people have opened Pandora's box. They've opened Pandora's box. Anyway, I'm going to play a video. I've got to go and do the school run. I'm going to play a video, and I'm going to play a video, and I'm going to leave you guys all to watch the video. It's basically all of my thoughts for the past 6 months, and advances, Ben Habib's speech at the last event. So I've got to put this in here because I've got to get out and do this, guys. So yeah, I am absolutely appalled what's happening, and I'll leave it all against you guys. Leave it all with you guys. If they're all against us, then we'll stand on our own together. And I know that everybody in this chat and everybody that stands with me on a regular basis has stood with me. And any of that have left, that's up to them. That's up to them. Yeah, right. I'm going to go here, guys. Okay, I'm going to go. I've got to play this. I'll play this, and I'll play this, and I'll see you all soon.
Everyone that is indebted to us, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
We've all been talking about politics for years, and the Mother of Parliament is behind me. House of Parliament. An amazing, amazing structure, amazing building, amazing architecture. It's iconic. When everybody sees that, they know that they're looking at London. But without a political solution, without a political answer to the questions that we're facing, we're in a world of trouble. And there is one answer, there's a very good answer, it's Advance UK. I believe it's the only answer. We need that house that you can see behind me, absolutely stacked full of Advance UK MPs. We need Ben Habib as Prime Minister, I mean that. We want Ben Habib as Prime Minister, Ben for number 10. And at the next general election, we have a chance to do this. We really genuinely do. And it's up to every single one of us, what we do and how we do it. But for me, getting Ben Habib into number 10 Downing Street, well, as far as I'll be concerned, that'll be mission accomplished, job done. I can then put my feet up and relax and take it easy. Let's get Ben in for number 10. Don't know how much you can see behind me, but this is a beautiful, beautiful country we live in. The whole of the United Kingdom. I was in Oxfordshire and Essex last week. Been to every part of the UK, Scotland, Wales, north of England. And the UK is a beautiful country. It's a temperate country. It's a country that never really gets to massive extremes of temperature or climate. It's a beautiful green country. And the country reflects the people. And the people reflect the culture. And what we're seeing in the UK at the minute, and what we've suffered for the past 30, 40 years, people don't realise how long this has been going on, has been an assault on British culture, an assault on everything that's good. And I'm going to tell you something. This country is worth fighting for. This country is worth straining every single sinew of your being for. This great United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and actually I'd include Ireland in that as well, because we might be cousins that have squabbled, but many Irish people are waking up to the fact that we've more in common than we have that divides us, and all the bitterness and bigotries of the past are being laid bare, and we're seeing that we've got a common enemy, and the common enemy, and it is an enemy. This is a fight of good against evil. And again, I'm just going to pan around just so you can see. Just have a look at that scenery. This is what I'm fighting for. Not just this scenery, but the people that fit into this scenery. And this battle between good and evil cannot be lost. If you've got children or grandchildren, we cannot afford to lose this. We're fighting against absolutely satanic forces. Years ago, I made a speech in London, and I talked about a great army of darkness that was trying to take over our nation. And sadly, at the minute, that great army of darkness is in control. But there's a storm coming for that great army of darkness. They are going to be vanquished. We are going to win. Because failure is not an option. And I think when you're in a battle between good and evil, you've got one thing that you need to make sure of. You need to make sure that you're on the right side. You need to make sure that you're on the side of good and not on the side of evil. And I know for sure that we're on the side of good. I know for sure that God is on our side. And if God's on your side, who can stand against you? 10,000 people might come against you. One man's going to put them to flight. And that's what we've got to realise. This is a battle between good and evil. We're on the side of the angels, and we will and we must win. And who's the enemy? Who's in this great army of darkness? Well, it's the red and the green, isn't it? It's the communists. It's the globalists. It's the Islamists. That evil triumphant. The Islamists. Look at what they've done this week. Look at the carnage that one man has created in Manchester. Look at the carnage that the communists have created for years. We're not going to give up to them. We're not going to surrender to them. And of course the globalists with their ideas of digital ID, control, AI, all the rest of it. We're living in the pages of the book of Revelation, guys. It's as simple as that. We are living in the book of Revelation. If digital ID is not something that's going to lead to the mark of the beast, I don't know what is. They want to control us. They want to manipulate us because they are satanic. They are evil. And the Bible's very clear. How do we fight evil? We fight evil with good. What's good? God is good. Only God is good. So we pray and we preach and we share the gospel and we live out our lives as Christians. And we get involved in society, we get involved in culture, we get involved in politics, we get involved in entertainment, we get involved in making videos. We start taking the culture back for Christ and for God. And that's what's needed. Because if we don't do that, if we don't fight on every single front, it's not just political. Political's part of it. It's political and it's spiritual. And the spiritual battle is far more important than the political or the cultural. Everything in culture, everything in politics is downstream of spirituality. When the atheists and the Islamists and the secularists and the people worshipping false gods are in control, everything falls apart. That's the story of the Bible from the Garden of Eden onwards. It goes right the way through. You look at those stories of all those kings in the Bible. But when God's in control, well, not God's always in control, but when we surrender to God and give God his rightful first place, that's when we see the greatest victories. Fight the good fight, overcome evil with good. See you soon. I want to talk about the pledge and what the pledge is about and what the pledge stands for. And there's 5 main statements in the pledge, and I'm going to deal with them one by one, but I'm going to do a video on each major statement. And the first statement is this: that we stand for freedom, equality under the law, real democracy, and family. And when you unpack each one of those is vital to the functioning of any democracy. So let's start off with freedom. What do we mean by freedom, that we stand for freedom? Sure, people say everybody's free. If you look over my shoulder there's one of these kite guys. I don't know if you can see it in the background. Some guy on one of these kites that you can get on the end of a surfboard and you can go, 40 miles an hour along the sea. It's great stuff. But that's not what freedom's about. The sort of freedom that we're talking about is freedom of conscience. It's freedom of speech. It's freedom of religion. Freedom of assembly. And under not just this Labour government, but successive governments, all those freedoms have been threatened and are actually coming under even more threat, especially when we look at things like the anti-Muslim hatred legislation and the definition of anti-Muslim hatred. They did call it Islamophobia, and quite rightly people said, well, Islamophobia isn't even a real thing. People need to catch themselves on. So they just changed the name, but kept the same purpose. And the purpose is to stop people being able to speak out. It's to silence people. And giving one religion a privileged position, especially with the atmosphere that there is in this country at the minute, is a very, very dangerous and foolhardy thing to do. But that's what the government's doing. And they're doing it for obvious reasons. They want to placate the Muslim vote and so on and so forth. So that's one of the freedoms that has been curtailed. But one of the other freedoms that's been curtailed, and again, this is where, as much as I hate to say it, we would have common cause with some people on the left, and it's freedom of assembly. I believe at any time and in any place, people should have the freedom to go out and protest peacefully about things that they feel passionately about. And we saw this curtailed massively after the dreadful slaughter by, I won't say the man's name, but you know who I'm talking about, the slaughter of those 3 angels in August. Was it August? It was August 2024. And there was a demonstration at Downing Street, and people went there and they protested peacefully. And many of them were arrested, and people were sent to prison for singing songs about Allah. That's what happened to a train driver, a 61-year-old train driver. Wonder how he's doing. Nobody talks about him anymore. 61-year-old train driver sent to prison for singing songs about Allah. And that was a direct attack on freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and freedom of assembly. And those court cases should never have happened, and those people should never have gone to prison. And this Labour government's responsible for that. So the pledge stands, and remember, the pledge was written before all this stuff happened. And the pledge stands absolutely, completely against the attack on freedom of religion that we've seen going on. And when we started the Veterans Against Terrorism, and I worked with some of the different football groups, some of the lads from Chelsea and some of the other groups, and we basically wrote mission statements. And our mission statements were... Oh, what about, yes, didn't you see? Our mission statements were directly targeted at people that were attacking freedom of religion, freedom of speech, even back in 2017. So this idea of freedom is vitally important. And how do they attack our freedom of conscience? Well, it's the intimidation, the consistent intimidation of people who have opinions different to the mainstream. And again, that has been a dreadful, dreadful assault on freedom of conscience. So if you have a certain ideology, a certain belief system, you'll be shunned by polite society. They will deliberately try and ridicule you and make you feel stupid. So all four of those freedoms, freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, which is freedom of thought, freedom of speech, and freedom of assembly, have all been viciously attacked. And people have gone to prison in the United Kingdom for singing songs about Allah. Go figure. Go figure the direction of travel that our country's going in. So the pledge has consistently stood against all that sort of stuff. Just realised I've got myself into a situation on the beach here where I'm on the wrong side of a river, so I'm going to have to turn around and go back this way. So the pledge is committed to standing for those things. And again, the whole idea of the pledge is to call politicians to account. So even though I support Advance UK and I'm a member of Advance UK, to me the pledge is above politics. And it sits above any party. Whether it's Advance UK, whether it's, well, whatever the party is. The pledge is the ideology of our movement. The pledge is the ideas behind our movement. So the next one. Equality before the law. Now, this isn't the DEI type equality. This isn't the sort of equality that discriminates against... I mean, this is the crazy thing about the modern equality. To lift other groups up, they discriminate against the majority groups. And talk about a recipe for disaster. Well, we're seeing the outworking of that recipe for disaster as we see the rise in the ethno-nat parties and the ethno-nat groups and so on and so forth. But the equality we believe in is this: that every man, every woman is made in the image of God. And if you're made in the image of God, then you intrinsically have equality. That everybody's equal in the eyes of God. That nobody gets a free pass. Nobody can behave as they want and behave in a manner that is disruptive to society. Everybody's accountable before God, but everybody's equal before God. And that's what being made in the image of God is about. It's about equality before God, and obviously that's reflected in equality before the law. Everyone's accountable to the law, but everybody's protected by the law as well. The next one is real democracy. And I think what we've seen, certainly in the past, well, 10 years. It's 10 years since the whole Brexit thing, isn't it? 10 years. And I think what we've seen since Brexit is that basically the idea of real democracy has been massively undermined. The blob, the deep state, the Uni-Party deliberately tried to undermine Brexit and make sure Brexit didn't happen. Now, thankfully, well, in fact, Brexit hasn't happened. Let's just be brutally honest. We need to see Brexit delivered because Northern Ireland's been left behind. Northern Ireland's been abandoned by this government and other governments. So democracy has been completely devalued in the UK. And the pledge is committed, is absolutely committed to supporting parties that fully support genuine democracy. And again, if that doesn't happen, well, there's going to be massive problems down the road, massive problems for the country. And the final one is the pledge stands for family. And that's a very personal thing, because every single human being, every single person that's watching this video, in some way, shape or form is in a family. Even if you're an orphan, you still have a family somewhere. You still have people that you're connected to. You still have kith and kin. And again, that's a very, very important point and a very important idea that we've got to get our heads around and understand. So, and I think the way that the pledge can protect families and look after families and encourage families to prosper and grow is by defining what a family is. And somewhere along the line, a family has to consist of one man and one woman who came together and made children, whether it goes right the way back to Adam and Eve or whether it's your mum and dad or my mum and dad. That's a family. That is the core of a family. And again, that needs to be protected, and it needs to be looked after, and it needs to be supported. So yeah, that's the first principles of the pledge. I hope they make sense. Hope they're understandable, and I'm going to do a video like this every day, just going through what the pledge is really about. And do me a favour, like and share this video. Share the pledge, sign up to thepledge.org.uk. The purpose of the pledge is to save the country. And that's the same purpose that Advance UK's got as well. So anyway, okay guys, see you all soon. I think it's safe to say that we all need a plan. And that could be in your personal life, it could be for your family, it could be for your business, your community. Well, we need a plan for the country. And I believe we're in a unique position. And when I'm talking about we, I'm talking about Tommy supporters, Unite the Kingdom, patriots, people that love the country, veterans, football fans, the people that walk this road with me and with Tommy and with others since 2017. And why do I think we're in a unique position now? Well, I think we've got basically a toolbox. And inside that toolbox are the tools to pull every single lever of power that you can possibly conceive to change the country for the better. And I'm going to go through them. First of all, the Unite the Kingdom rallies. This is a massive, massive movement. The country has never seen anything like this before. How many people were at the event on the 13th of September 2025 will be debated forever. But what we do know is this. There was a lot of people there. And the deep state, the media, were panic-stricken. But if all those people just come out once a year, walk around London, have a really great time, build up some friendships, build up some fellowships, and talk about what the problems are, then that doesn't really solve anything. We actually need solutions. So as well as having this mass cultural movement, we need ideology. We need something to believe in. Now, there's two things that I think are vitally important in terms of belief. The first one is, and anybody that knows me for long enough will know, there you go, Richard's going to mention the pledge. Well, the pledge is basically a codified ideology of everything that we believe. It's an amalgamation of mission statements that were written, that were put together from 2017 onwards. It was written down, it was codified, and then we got people to sign it. And at the minute, we've got probably about 70,000 people, genuine people, who have signed the pledge. You lose some, you gain some. It should be 1 million, but that's another story. So the pledge is part of the ideology. That's another tool in the toolbox. We've got the Unite the Kingdom rallies. We've got the pledge. Now, the next thing I want to talk about isn't a tool, because nobody uses the next tool in the toolbox. It uses you. And that is Christianity, genuine Bible-based Christianity. people's lives getting changed, people's lives getting put back together. That's what Christianity is about. Christianity is about God meeting men and changing them for the better and then taking them to heaven. A lot more to it, obviously. We could talk about the atonement, we could talk about the resurrection, we could talk about the virgin birth, we could talk about the fall of man, all those things. But Christianity is the glue, is the religious glue that has held our nation together since probably about 300 AD, if the truth be known, because Christianity came to these islands with the Romans. So there's three of the tools in the toolbox. But if you have all of those tools and you don't have a way of changing power and changing the governance of the country, then you're going to be extremely frustrated and you'll probably end up falling foul of the complete traitors that are running the country and that have run the country into the ground for probably 50 or 60 years. Everybody blames Tony Blair, and he's got a lot of blame, but this goes right the way back to Roy Jenkins and the Permissive Society in the 1960s. So we need political change. And that's where the final piece of the jigsaw, the fourth pillar of how we're going to save our country comes in, and that's Advance UK. And I believe with all my heart that Advance UK is the party that's going to save our country. I know the people that are involved in the leadership. I'm not in the leadership. I'm deliberately not in the leadership because I say some very controversial things. And what I don't want to do is do anything to frustrate the chances of Advance UK forming the next government. And I believe that's possible because I know the talent of the people that are involved in leading that party. And I will support them as long as they keep on the track and on the path that they're on. I will support them. And Tommy's supporting them. Many other people, prominent people, are supporting them. I'd like to see more vocal support from different YouTubers. Like I say, Tommy's done his bit. Tommy's done videos. Tommy's been talking about this. Tommy's been mentioning Advance on a regular basis. I've been mentioning them in every single video that I do. But we need to get behind them. We need to join Advance. We need to get active in the party. If required, we need to stand for election. And again, I've no political ambitions. Like Tommy said in his video, he's no political ambitions. I much prefer shouting from the sidelines. But if needs must, you do what you've got to do. If your country calls you, you've got to do what you've got to do. So they're the tools in the box. And if we get an Advance UK government with Ben Habib at the helm, I know that they will make the change that's necessary to save our country and to turn our country into a peaceful, harmonious, prosperous, forward-thinking nation that it needs to be, based on those values that are so British: freedom, equality, democracy, and sovereignty. Remember, we took democracy around the world. We took freedom around the world. We took Christianity around the world. And now people are coming back to us and bringing Christianity back and coming back to us and telling us that we need to protect our democracy. Advance UK is the only party that's going to do that. So that's the tools in the box. Unite the Kingdom, the pledge, a Christian revival, which we can't manufacture. That only God can do that. And finally, Advance UK as the party that will protect everything and renew everything that we hold dear. See you all soon. Well, we've done all the politics stuff. We've looked at all, everything that's happening in England politically, and I think obviously what we really need to focus on, and what's vitally important, way more than the political side of things, is the spiritual side of things. And I would just encourage everybody to pray, because I think we're at a very pivotal moment in what we call the movement in the UK. And there's a lot there's a lot of moving parts. One of my friends said that to me this morning. He said, there's a lot of moving parts in the movement at the minute. I said, yeah, it's what we used to call a target-enriched environment. In other words, we're surrounded, okay? But we need to pray. We need to seek God, and I keep getting this all the time. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. That's what we've got to do. We've got to take all of these issues, all of these political problems, take them to the Lord. And that's the most important thing. Because if God's in it, it'll work. It's not, it might work. If God's in it and God's behind it, it'll work, and it'll work in the most unusual ways, ways that we don't expect. And our great country, our beautiful country, and the beautiful people in our country saw revival. They took the gospel all over the world. When you have Nigerian Christians coming back to the UK and setting up churches and reading from the King James Version of the Bible, that's not a coincidence. That's because British missionaries went to West Africa, they packed their belongings in coffins, they went to West Africa, they preached the gospel to the people, many of them died within weeks of getting there. And the African church was born, or the West African church was born. And man, it's been a church that's been forged in fire. But Britain did that. Britain spread the gospel. Britain spread civilization. Britain spread democracy. Britain spread the legal system. And yeah, we've got to really, really focus on the kingdom of God and focus on Christ and focus on prayer and praying that God's will be done in our great nation. See you all soon. I think a lot about what people say about the church, and the letter that the so-called leaders of the churches in England sent, well, I don't even know if they sent them to, well, they certainly didn't send them to me, and I'm one of the organisers of the events, but the letters that those church leaders, the public letters that those church leaders published about the Unite the Kingdom rally, they're reprehensible, you know, absolutely reprehensible. And I thought about what Tommy said. Tommy was being interviewed by one of the writers, a Jewish gentleman, one of the writers for The Spectator, Jonathan someone or other. Can't remember his full name. But, and he said this to him. He said, look, he said, when he was in prison, he says the pastor that managed to speak to him, the pastor that got through was, well, first of all, he was Asian, which I thought was fantastic. He was an Asian guy, but he said he was a geezer, he was a lad, he was from the street. And I thought about that, and I thought, what the church does is, it really does, to a great extent, I've got to be careful what I say here. I'm not about the true church. I'm on about the sort of sissified woke church, not the masculine, muscular Christianity that we need, but the very, very wet, limp-wristed, lame version of church, which isn't church at all. And what we need is a church on the street. And there's a lad I see preaching, I think he's in Newcastle, big lad, and he preaches the gospel, and he's fearless, and he's out there relentlessly. I hope he's still doing it, I hope he's still going on with God. But I've seen him a few times on YouTube, seen other people on YouTube out in the street. I used to do that for years. Had people spit in my face, had people attack me, and listen, I was a lot more capable then of fighting back than probably I am now, and I still wouldn't back down from too many men now. But when I had a Bible in my hand, never retaliated. In fact, everything I've done in the movement, I've never actually got involved in punching people or getting violent, because I've always felt God's protection. And that's not being a wimp, by the way. That's just doing what the Bible says and turning the other cheek. Someone comes up and punches you on the jaw, tries to punch you on the jaw, you've got every right to defend yourself. Every right to defend yourself. Turning the other cheek doesn't mean you become a doormat and let people kick you up and down the street. But it means that you use self-control and you don't get yourself into situations where you can, well, really get yourself into a terrible position, because there's a lot can go wrong. If you're fighting on the street, there's a lot can go wrong. And when I was a kid, probably it feels like this, from the age of 14 to 24, when I left the army, it felt like I had a fight every week. Probably didn't, but that's what it felt like. fights in the army accommodation, fights in the blocks, fights in the NAFI, fights downtown, fights when I was back home in Middlesbrough. Before I went to the army, it was the same. Everybody was having a pop at each other, and that was just the culture I was brought up in. But when I became a Christian, I can safely say I've only had one. It wasn't really a fight. One violent incident that was not. I mean, obviously I've sparred and boxing and done karate and mixed martial arts, all that sort of stuff. But actually, a street fight, I haven't had one since I was 24. And it's a young man's sport. So when I'm talking about muscular Christianity, I'm not talking about people going out and being violent, but I'm talking about people being able to defend themselves. People being capable of fighting, but not fighting. That whole idea of meekness, where you're capable of doing all sorts, but you don't do it because at the end of the day, you've got a better way of doing things. And jaw is better than war, for sure, as Russia's found out after its folly of attacking Ukraine, and the Ukrainians have found out, and Hamas have found out, etc., etc. War is not a good plan. And we've been blessed in the West with peace for a very long time. And when you think about Northern Ireland and the Troubles, Northern Ireland still bears the scars of what happened in the Troubles. And there's still a mentality in Northern Ireland that can explode very quickly. And in a way, that's a strength, because it means that people from Northern Ireland, communities in Northern Ireland, don't like getting pushed around and stand up for themselves, even if that means against the state. However, the reality of the situation is, what we never want to see is going back to the days of, turning on the news and there's another soldier, policeman, civilian, loyalist Republican killed innocent people that maybe weren't innocent, but there was a lot of death and it left a deep scar. And my fear is that if we don't get this right with what we're doing in Unite the Kingdom, in all the other little movements that are going on, we could end up in that situation. And of course, we do have, I believe, we've got a fifth column in our midst, the Islamists, the communists. And how do we stand against that when the state isn't standing against it, and the politicians, the police, nobody's standing up for the little guy? So how do you fight back against that? And I think it's got to be through building community, not through being violent, but building community, building a community of strong, robust men that can box, that can fight, that have been in the military. I still think I think every young man between the age of 16 and 20 should have to do at least a year's military service and be taught about patriotism, military history, and the great things that the United Kingdom did. I think that would be a good policy. They don't have to go and fight. You don't have to send them to the front line. You let them do a year, let them do their training, get them trained up to a decent level, and if they've got a passion for it, they'll stay. If they haven't, well, then they'll go off on their merry way. But at least they'll have had discipline, patriotism, love of country, respect for women and kids, all those good things instilled into them, instead of just getting radicalized by the media, by the gangs. So there's things that we can do as a nation, there's things that we can do as Christians, there's things that we can do as our community, with Unite the Kingdom, with the Pledge, with Advance UK, we can get people involved. But when we get power, and we need to get power, when we get power, I think some form of national service would be superb. And I also think there's a very strong argument for a government-raised Home Guard, something similar to the Ulster Defence Regiment or the Royal Irish Regiment, Home Service battalions. Because I do believe that we're going to be in a situation where the police ain't going to be able to cope, the army will be deployed, and if the state doesn't step into that vacuum, well then you're going to have vigilante groups and all sorts of stuff propping up, and that's the last thing we want. So yeah, I know a lot of that's quite a sort of rambling video, but I'm just thinking out loud how we fulfill our mandate as men, how we do what's required of us. And of course it all starts at the basic. It starts relationship with God, relationship with your family, love for your family, protecting your family, and then it expands out there, from there to community and town and city and county and so on and so forth. And that's why people have those tribal loyalties to the football teams. That's why every Englishman should support England. Every lad from Middlesbrough, for all the pain and tribulation of it, should support Middlesbrough. If you're from Bangor, which is a town I live in, you should support your local team. Now, I'm not born here, and one of the interesting things is, because I'm not born in Northern Ireland, I've lived here most of my life. I've lived here a lot longer than I lived in England, but I've never lost my English accent. And I've never lost my love for England and my love for the football team. And the rugby team for that matter. Not so much rugby, but certainly football. And I think that's an interesting thing, because when we have people coming into our country, as much as they want to be part of the gang, if they do, I mean, a lot of them don't, and that's an even bigger problem. But the reality is, there's something about the country that you were born in, that your forefathers are buried in the ground of that country. There's something about that. There's something very powerful about that. And I love Northern Ireland, and I'd never leave Northern Ireland. But my roots are in England, and my kith and kin are under the ground in England. Unless they got cremated, of course, but they're still probably under the ground because the ashes get scattered. Anyway, let's get a bit morbid, but yeah, so I think we need to realise that those ties, and that's why we've got a problem in the UK, because particularly I'm not going to name the communities. There's some communities in England, in the UK, predominantly in England, whose loyalties are split, and that's a big problem. That's a big problem. They're split on religious grounds, and they're split on national grounds. And that was one of the main things that caused the problem in Northern Ireland, that there was a split because of religion and because of nationality. And yeah, so that's, just going to cross back over there. There's people doing a bit of work there. That's something I think we've got to really, really consider when we're thinking about how we solve the problems of the UK. Anyway, bit of a rant. Went a bit all over the house on that one, but sometimes it's just good to talk and think while you're talking, and hopefully something comes out the other end that makes sense to somebody in the crazy world of the internet. And again, one of my main priorities in doing this is to try and make sure that our country stays peaceful, stays free, and stays Christian. See you all soon. Had a great meeting yesterday with I suppose what you call a political advisor, who did a massive amount of work during the peace process in Northern Ireland, basically explaining, I think, and articulating why violence had to be moved away from. It wasn't just him, there was a lot of people involved in it, but he was involved in political loyalism. He was not a loyalist paramilitary, but he was involved in political loyalism, and he speaking to him yesterday, just an amazing depth of knowledge of unionism, of what working class Protestant and loyalist communities are crying out for and really need. And sadly, I think the conclusion we came to yesterday was, to a great extent, working class, whatever you want to call them, working class Protestant unionists and loyalist people have been massively let down by the peace process, by the state, sometimes by their massively by their politicians, and sometimes even by the community leaders. And I think the thing that we were trying to figure out is what can be done politically to help people in working class loyalist areas, and actually not just working class loyalist areas, but also Republicans to a great extent. People in Republican areas, nationalist areas, have been massively let down as well. When you look at the cost of housing in Northern Ireland, the lack of housing in Northern Ireland, the lack of amenities, the lack of resources, right the way across the board, it affects both sides. It affects both communities. And I think what we were talking about was really how do we get working class people in Northern Ireland seriously engaged in the political process. Don't get me wrong, there are some great politicians. I mean, my local MP, Alex Easton, great local politician. He engages with everybody. He talks to everybody. He's not in any way sniffy. Some lunatic just threw a ball at me, but these things happen. It's just a test of my reflexes, but there we go. No, don't worry, mate. No, that was certainly a test of reflexes there for sure. But yeah, you know, one of these things that people throw balls with, yeah, it just for the dogs. The guy just threw it, and you could see his face was horrified that he thought he just hit a 6'2" bruiser on the head with a tennis ball. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. That's what happens when you walk on the beach. Very dangerous occupation, walking on the beach on a Saturday afternoon in Bangor. But yeah, so we had long discussions about is there a way to help people, because that help just is not coming at the minute. And it's because of the left. The crazy thing is the people who pretend to care about the working class, the British and the Irish working class in Northern Ireland, probably care the least. I think that's fair to say. You know, the Sinn Féin, Alliance, SDLP types, they've no interest. They've really no interest in what's happening in their own communities. The DUP, UUP a little better. I think probably at the minute the best of a bad bunch is Jim Allister. I've met Jim Allister and spoke to him personally, and Jim is concerned about what's happening in Northern Ireland. But again, his party is not where it should be. You know, and is it fully engaging with people in grassroots unionist communities, and could it ever engage with people in nationalist communities? It's doubtful. So how do you get something that will engage at that level? And you know what my answer is going to be. I think there's a massive gap in the market, so to speak, and I think Advance UK could fill that gap, and I think Advance UK could make a massive difference. Again, it's got to get its policies right. It's got to get away from the sniffiness of dealing with working class people. Now, I'm not saying Advance UK is like that because it's a brand new party, but it's got to make sure that it will fully engage with everybody. And I think Ben showed that he will, because he's engaging with me, and he's engaging with Tommy Robinson, and he's engaging with other people on the naughty step in terms of the British government, on the right of British politics, on the naughty step, so to speak. So Ben is engaging, and I think we've got to work out how he can engage with people in Northern Ireland that the mainstream politicians and the mainstream political parties just refuse to talk to. And again, how can there be engagement? And this is literally the vote winning and the election winning combination. If somebody can straddle the working class Protestant with the working class nationalist communities and bring people together for the common good and for making this great country of Northern Ireland properly cohesive. Not the high-level meetings that were had back in the day, but bringing people together under one political umbrella that they could jointly vote for. That is, well, it would be unashamedly pro-British, and that would be a very, very difficult pill, I think, for a lot of nationalists to swallow. But how can that be done? How can the sectarianism and the years of mistrust be broken down so that we can actually literally reach across what used to be the barricades? I mean, the troubles are over for a long time now, and there's loads of mixing, but there is still a rump of people that are driven by sectarian bigotry, sectarian hatred. I don't want anything to do with that. I don't care whether you're a Catholic or a Protestant. It doesn't interest me. I'm not bothered about a sectarian headcount. But what I am bothered about is making Northern Ireland work and seeing Northern Ireland work. And I wonder, and I'm hoping that Advance UK is going to have the answers to that. But to do that, there's going to have to be some brave moves taken on all sides to make the magic happen. And that's what I'm hoping for with Advance UK. So again, I'm just a lowly member of Advance UK. I'm just talking off the top of my head. But I think the more ideas we can get out there into the open, and the more we can talk about what's needed and the hard decisions that people need to make on all sides to bring something together that could actually bring everybody together in Northern Ireland and push the extremes to the extreme. Because I believe there still are extremists. I believe the Alliance Party is an extreme party. I really do. I mean, that sounds crazy. The Alliance Party was meant to be the one that brought everyone together. I believe Sinn Féin are an extreme party, and I believe there's other extremists as well. And what we need to do is find a way of bringing people together and making this country an amazing place, and the place it should be. Because I've got friends on from every side of the community. Some friends that you would scare the life out of you, but they're my friends. And I'm never gonna throw somebody under the bus because of what their past looks like. And I think that's something that any politician that's operating in Northern Ireland needs to bear in mind. See you soon.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, to deliver the first of our policies, please welcome Party Leader Ben Habib.
Thank you very much, folks. Now, normally, if you've heard me speak, I do it without notes. I thought since I was going to give you our first couple of policies, I might note some of them down, and I've noted them down for you. So this is going to be a relatively easy speech, I hope, for me to make, not completely coming out of my mind. But before I start, can I just say, isn't it peculiar that a so-called racist party has a multi-ethnic leader? You lot clearly don't know what you've signed up for. But on a more serious note, there are some anti-racist people outside. And the reason we were slightly delayed starting this conference was because they're blocking our live stream signal, and we were trying to get that fixed. So for all their moral correctitude, actually they would wish to silence us. They wish to silence what we have to say. We will not let them silence us. Now, when I first indicated on the 30th of June 2025 that I was considering launching a political party, I set two hurdles for the party. The first was that we would have to hit 30,000 members. And I thought that might be a get-out-of-jail-free card, that I wouldn't hit it and that I could retire back to my normal life and say, well, I gave it a shot, it didn't work. Within a couple of months, we hit our target. And if you had said to me then that in 6 months, Ben, you will have nearly 40,000 members, you would have fought your first council by-election and got 12.3% in it. Where's the wonderful Alex Stevenson? And that you, at the time of speaking on your first policy, you would have a candidate standing in a by-election that has got so riled up my erstwhile party that they've been denouncing him non-stop on X. I won't name the party, I think you can guess. But for all the banging of drums that party does about freedom of speech, actually, it stands against it. It wishes to silence Nick Buckley. How astonishing it must have been for them that a political party wished to stand a candidate in an election. How bizarre a concept is that? But as Nick said, whatever happens in that by-election actually won't make a jot of a difference on the national stage, but in one respect. If we do well in that by-election, it will send a seismic shock through Westminster. So it was absolutely vital we stand. Absolutely vital, and that's why they didn't want us to do it. So to the extent that any of you have got free time coming up over the next couple of weeks, I plead to you, please go up to Gorton and Denton, support Nick Buckley, and let's win this by-election. Now, before I start on the first policy, I do just want to thank a few people. I want to thank the Emmanuel Centre particularly, because the location of this venue was given away earlier this week, and following the disclosure of the location, they were inundated with the so-called anti-hate people trying to shut us down, the anti-racists trying to shut us down, and they held their ground. And I'm very grateful to them. The only way we're going to prevail, ladies and gentlemen, is if we all hold our ground. We must not bend. We must keep standing up, whatever they do and whatever they say. I would also like to thank, you've heard her name a few times, some of you know who she is. Luckily for those of you who don't, she's here, Floss. Floss, stand up, be counted. This venue, this event wouldn't have taken place without Floss. I also want to thank she can be a bit of a pain sometimes, but she got this together. I want to thank Françoise as well, who's head of events. Françoise is here somewhere, who's been instrumental in doing this. And then I want to thank David Rhodes, who habitually repeatedly tells me he wants to take a back seat. Well, for someone who wants to take a back seat, he's heading up the policy development of Advance UK. He's a phenomenal member of our college, and without him, we wouldn't have what I'm about to disclose to you. And I'd like, last of all, if I may, to thank the college for the hard work that they do behind the scenes. What I'm going to show you now is just a synopsis of our draft policies. This is not comprehensive. It took me ages poring through the document they produced to actually pick out the key bits that I thought I could get through in now 18 minutes that I've got left to speak to you. They are in draft because as we move forward between now and the next general election, we are going to continue to refine our policies. We're going to continue to make the public aware of what those policies are. so that by the time we get to 2028, 2029, we have a perfect, or as close as perfect, set of policies that have been thought through in great detail, and we're going to back it up with draft legislation. That draft legislation will be appended to our manifesto, and for those of the public who wish to read it, the exact direction of travel that we will set for this country will be known. There will be no ambiguity in our policies. It won't be a manifesto put together within 3 weeks. Isn't it peculiar, ladies and gentlemen, that political parties stand for government and they produce a manifesto 2 or 3 weeks before the election, full of nonsense, none of which ever gets delivered? That has to change. And so we will have draft legislation. And the benefit of having draft legislation, there's multiple benefits. The first of which is that the British people know precisely what it is we're going to do, so we can't let them down. We've made it crystal clear. The next benefit, and this is really important, is that the Lords can't interfere with it. The civil service can't interfere with it. When I walk into the Commons in May 2029 for the first time as Prime Minister of this country, that is the risk of being a leader of a political party. You may end up as Prime Minister, but when I walk into the Commons, I'm going to thump this document down, this draft legislation, and I'm going to look across to the opposite benches, and I'm going to address the Lords, the civil service and the British people, and I'm going to thump this document down and say, I have the democratic backing of the British people to deliver this agenda. We have one last chance to save this country. I think I can't remember who said it earlier, but it took 1,000 years to build this great country. It's taken 30 years to trash it. And we have to save it, and save it we will. Now, the first policy that we were going to draft was on immigration, because that is the thing that really exercises the people's minds. 80% of people in this country put immigration at the top of their concern list. But as we were drafting it, a couple of things happened. The first thing was that we realized, the group of people that were drafting it and myself, that actually there's something more fundamental that has to underpin not just our immigration policy, but all our policies. It is who we are. What are we as a country? Who are we? What do we wish to be? How do we wish to move forward? Unless you've established that principle, those sets of principles, you're at sea making other policies. You won't know how to make the other policies you need to make to save the United Kingdom if you can't first establish who we are. And I'm afraid, as much as Keir Starmer and the liberal globalist lunatics would like to categorize British culture as something of an inferior debate. They call it the culture wars. We're not going to entertain the culture wars. As much as they might wish to categorize it as that, actually British culture is what we're fighting for. When we went to war against Hitler, we didn't go to war for economic advancement. We went to war to save our way of life, to save our constitution, our culture, our people. And we are at that point again. There aren't guns being fired, but we're at a point where we have to fight that same battle for our way of life. So, the government in its desire to set aside this nation, has defined cultural nationalism as far right. How many of you in this room were aware of that before I just told it to you? A few. The government of the United Kingdom has denounced British culture. If you look up far-right terrorism, you will find that it defines it as violence perpetrated in the pursuit of far-right ideologies, and one far-right ideology that it cites is cultural nationalism. Without a culture, we have no nation state, and they would like to diminish our culture, tell us that those of us who believe in it are far-right, and at the same time, tell us that cultures coming from abroad should be celebrated, championed, have a protective cloak put around them, and we should take the knee to their cultures. Enough of that. They have traduced our culture to such an extent that actually when people are asked, well, what does it mean to be British? We're reduced to ridiculous platitudes such as, well, being nice, being tolerant. Well, it's a hell of a lot more muscular than that, I have to remind people. British culture is a rich, woven web of brilliance. And I've highlighted a few points on the screen, as you can see. Morality, customs, behaviors, laws, art, music, architecture, a shared history, shared values, language. Why do they wish to denounce our national heroes? Because they want to cut our connection with our history, our common history. Why do they wish to decolonize the English language? Because if they can control language, they can denounce our culture. Why do they make laws like bringing into the body of British law the European Convention of Human Rights, the Human Rights Act? Because they want to set aside what it means to be a British citizen. This is the effect of 30 years of government policy. Well, it has to stop now. We know what British culture is. Sorry, I'm pointing at a screen down there because I can see what you can see up there, down there. And all of you will recognize what those words mean, and they play into each other. Morality manifests itself in our art. Our history manifests itself in art, in music, our architecture, our great forefathers who built wonderful buildings and statues, who now we're told are racist and they need to come down. That is just a lie. It is an attack on our culture. Culture is the foundational building block. It is the glue that allows us to identify who we are. Someone asked me before I came in to speak to you, are you a bit nervous addressing 1,000 people in the Emmanuel Center? And I thought about it for a second, and actually I wasn't nervous at all. And why wasn't I nervous? Because I knew I was coming to address a body of people who share my life vision. We are of the same culture. You are our family and I am your family. And that's how it has to be. There's something that I do want to just focus on a little bit. We tend to think of culture separately from law. And law has been used to defeat British culture. I touched on the Human Rights Act. But there's been a whole body of law that's been put into place, including, for example, defining far right as believing in this country's culture. There's been a whole body of law that has been attacking our culture. And if you have a body of law that informs you that you need to behave in a particular way, then you start behaving in that way because you don't want to break the law. And when you start behaving in that way, you adopt this new culture that the government is forcing down our throats, this multiculturalism, the ending of what you and I might identify as British culture. Law is upstream of culture, which is upstream of experience, which reinforces culture, which then informs parliamentarians on how to make law. There is a circle, and we have to reverse the circle they've been pushing down our throats for the last 30 years. So just to sum up, our culture is freedom, nation state, duty and patriotism. Being a British citizen is a huge privilege, but it comes with duty. You owe this country something for being a citizen. As Andy died, I think he said he's served 10 years in the Paras. That is fulfilling your duty. I've had a great life. I'm trying to fulfill my duty now by giving back to the British people. And you're all here because you're fulfilling your duty, because you see we're imperiled. That sense of, that contract between to this country, you are going to save this country through that cultural commitment. I want to talk about aspiration and merit as well. We've forgotten what aspiration is. Every time something goes wrong, we look at the state and say, well, can you please save us? Can you do something? Can you spend more money? We've got 8 million people out of a workforce of 35 million who are surviving on universal credit. And yet we keep saying we haven't got enough people in the economy, we've got to take in more migrants. It is ridiculous. We need aspiration reinstalled in the United Kingdom so people wish to come off dependency, wish to go into work, and we're going to reveal a couple of those policies in a second that's going to help do that. But as I said, law comes upstream of culture, and there are some fundamental legal changes that we would do on the first day in government. The first thing we would do, and it's kind of ironic, really, that we would be doing this, because it was us that set up the European Convention of Human Rights. I can't remember, again, which brilliant speaker earlier said that some European countries are grateful for us having saved them from the grip of Nazi tyranny. But we set up the ECHR not because the United Kingdom needed to be policed, its human rights needed to be policed. Our human rights have existed for over 1,000 years. It was the Europeans who needed the European Convention of Human Rights because they just can't help tearing themselves apart. But that European Convention of Human Rights has now been put into such, it's turned into a mill round our necks. In the pursuit of human rights, we are forgetting what it means to be us. And we're not being allowed to put British national interests first. We're not allowed to put British people's interests first. And in fact, we get the bizarre result that often we will protect criminals and denounce victims, as we've seen with the rape gangs. All of that comes from the European Convention of Human Rights as put into the body of British law through the Human Rights Act. That was one of Blair's initial gifts to the British people, and we are going to repeal it on the first day in government. We are going to abolish the Equality Act. There's nothing about equality in the Equality Act. The Equality Act produces inequality. It informs us that you will be judged by the color of your skin, your ethnicity, your religious beliefs, not by the content of your character. Quite the opposite of what Martin Luther King had in mind. The Equalities Act has to go, and that will go on the first day of an advanced government. All hate speech laws will be abolished. And now the last one, and you might think, why the hell is Ben going back to the withdrawal agreement that got us out of the European Union? Well, the withdrawal agreement is a bastardization of the United Kingdom. It did not give effect to our leaving the EU. What it did was rearrange our rearranged the United Kingdom's relationship with the EU. In many ways, it made it worse. And I think all of you know that if we are still embedded, infected with the global order, we will never be able to put this country first. And there's something particularly bad about the withdrawal agreement, and many of you, all of you perhaps, have heard me speak about it before, which is the Northern Ireland Protocol. We have become... A lot of people think Northern Irish politics is a minority sport. It isn't. When a country puts a flipping border down the middle of itself and heaves off over 1 million citizens to a foreign power, subject to foreign laws adjudicated by a foreign court, you know that country has lost its way. Northern Ireland, the Northern Ireland Protocol is not just about Northern Ireland. It is about us rediscovering who the hell we are. Are we going to stand by our British brethren, or are we going to throw them under a bus? I know what I'm going to do. And we are going to get rid of the withdrawal agreement. And there'll be a whole policy on how we're going to deal with the EU, none of which von der Leyen is going to much enjoy reading. Now, there's been a lot of talk of Christianity, and of course we are a tolerant country, but we must never forget that we're not just culturally a Christian country, we are constitutionally a Christian country. We must not forget that. How is it that it has come to be that people talk about the United Kingdom as if it's a multi-faith country? Sure, you can have different faiths. You can be an atheist. You don't have to believe in Christianity. But if you live in this country, you must recognize that this is a Christian country. Starmer wants to remove the bishopric from the House of Lords. Why does he want to do that? I mean, the bishopric are a pretty useless bunch of people now because the Church of England itself has lost its way. But the reason he wants to remove the bishopric from the House of Lords is because he wants to remove the last constitutional vestige of Christianity manifesting itself in our Constitution. He wants it gone. And then it's a hop and a skip to say, well, actually, we're a multicultural, multi-faith nation, and that's the end of Christianity at the heart of things. So the first policy we're going to introduce is that parliamentarians, public officers, anyone taking public office of any description has a choice. They can either swear on the Bible or they can swear on a neutral oath, but there will be no swearing on a foreign religious text. We will promote our Christian heritage, our culture. If you go back to the slide where I laid out what culture means, Christianity infuses every part of that, our art, our buildings, our statues, what we fought for. If you go into a church in this country, you all know this. You go into a church in a foreign country, and what you see are trappings of Christianity. You walk into a church in this country, and you see the trappings, obviously, of Christianity, but you see also, alongside them, the heritage of this country played out through remembering those who died in the various villages where these churches are, those who died in the great wars protecting this country, protecting our Christian heritage. Our church and our heritage and our great military past, which is very, very important to this country, they all go hand in hand, and we will reinforce that Christian heritage. And we will prohibit the conversion of churches to foreign religions. When you see a church being converted to another religion, that religion is basically saying, we've beaten you. We've taken your building. That is going to stop. How is it that our flags have become so toxic to the British people? There's nothing toxic about our flags. Yes, they're Christian too, by the way. They're Christian too. Maybe that's why people find them offensive. But our national flag, it'll be mandatory under an advanced government, that our national flag will fly on every building that is of public ownership. And we will recognize our great heroes and national figures. We're not going to allow statues to come down. If you let your statues come down, you forget who you are. And I did a debate recently at the Oxford Union in which I talked about Cecil Rhodes in glowing terms. You can imagine the kind of response that got. But the Rhodes Scholarship was bequeathed by Rhodes, saying that it should be blind to ethnicity and religious beliefs. Did you know that, folks? He was not a racist. He was a good man. And we are allowing our national heroes to be denounced. That has to stop too. And I want to also nod here, if I may, very briefly. I've only got 30 seconds left, but I'm going to go over time because there's a lot more to get through. I'm going to nod very briefly to the people Paul Thorpe remembered in his little speech. For every national hero we have, Wellington, Winston Churchill, Nelson, the Duke of Marlborough, behind them stood hundreds and thousands and millions of working class people. It is the British working class on whose back this country was built, and we forget them at our peril. When Nelson said, "England expects every man shall do his duty," people, the working class who manned those ships, weren't petrified, as I perhaps might have been. They cheered. They went into the French and Spanish fleet, bold in heart, and they laid down their lives to save our country. That is what culture is. The British working class are our culture. We will fund councils to promote quaint old things like Christmas and Easter. And we will speak English in every public sector. And of course, we have to do away with this decolonization of the UK. Again, that's an attack on our heritage. It's an attack on our culture. It's an attack on who we are. We will recolonize the curriculum. We will teach our constitution to our children. We will teach them about the contract that the British state has with citizenry, where citizenry get privileges because they're citizens, but then they have to stand up for the country as well. We will teach our children how our Christian forefathers have actually been a force for good, not the kind of Christianity that the anti-racist lot outside would like us to think. And let me just remind everyone that our national anthem is actually a hymn. It's a hymn, and we will sing it proudly in every state sector school and all our universities. It will be celebrated. At the heart of all of this is the family. And we are going to protect the family. We are going to destigmatize actually having children. We're going to destigmatize women looking after their children. And we're going to do that practically as well. This idea that you should reward people who can't afford to have children through a dependency culture of handing out benefits is wrong. Benefits for having children should be removed. You should be encouraged to have children through the tax system. You should be encouraged to get married. You should get a tax break. For every child you have, you should get a tax break. And you should be encouraged to stay at home and look after your children by getting a tax break. Get the tentacles of the state out of my family. And now the last one, the last line here you might think is a bit odd. Why has he suddenly put in a tax policy under the family? Well, let me tell you, inheritance tax is an evil tax. It raises not much for the exchequer, but it's a fantastic tool for the far left because it forces families to sell their homes, break their connection with the country, sell their businesses, break their connection with the economy of the country, sell their farms, break the connection with making food domestically in this country. It is an attack on the connection between the British people, its heritage, our heritage, and the land. And that's what they want to do. Inheritance tax, if we want to save the country, inheritance tax has to go. We have to reintroduce, I've touched on this briefly before, we have to reintroduce aspiration. You have to know that when you work, you will be rewarded for it. How can you go forward with confidence during the day if you think that every time you earn a pound, the government's going to reach into your back pocket and nick it, and then use that money actually to keep those people who refuse to work in the state that they kept, and not just them, but foreigners who've come to this country. And we've got to be grown up. We do need to make our accounts stack up. And other political parties won't talk about it. But we must cut back welfare. If you don't work, you will not get paid. There's no such thing as a free lunch. We're going to pursue British farming. I'm going to have to rush a bit, folks. We're going to pursue British farming. We're going to protect the countryside from new build housing. It's not necessary. We've got exhausted villages and town centres across the country, full of property that's vacant, that can be repurposed. You know why we can't repurpose it? Because of net zero. We can't repurpose it because of net zero, so they go and build on the green countryside. It's lunatic. And they take our country, once the countryside's gone, it's gone. We will reverse that. And we will prohibit the removal of farms from the fabric of British culture. Andy talked about the risk of prosecution when you serve this country. But there's also something else that we've done for our veterans, which is absolutely horrendous, or haven't done for our veterans, is we've turned our backs on them after they have served the country. We don't give them housing, we don't give them priority housing. We don't look after the mental health issues that they often have when they've come back from war zones. We give them no mechanism by which they can come back from the extreme conditions in which they have fought to protect this country, to find their feet again in society in this country. We have to repurpose them, if you like. They need a helping hand when they come out. And we will obviously get rid of any, I mean, I love the way Andy said it, you know, if we're going to put an officer or a member of the military on charge, well, then it has to go all the way up to blooming cabinet ministers. That's a good one. I think that would be the end of the prosecution of anyone in the military. We're going to get rid of dual nationality. Either you're British or you're not. We will define multiculturalism as an extreme far left form of ideology, which we will denounce. Even integration's not good enough. People have to be assimilated into British culture. There can be no foreign religious courts in the United Kingdom. There can be no public calls to prayer. And as much as I would wish not to have to use the law to bring our culture back into balance, things are so out of balance that I'm afraid we have no option now but to ban the burqa and the niqab. The burqa and the niqab are the outward expression of the repression of women. How did we get there? It also is an overt rejection of British culture. When you see a woman wearing the burqa and niqab, she is looking down on British culture. She is rejecting us. How can you be in our country, claim to be British, and reject Britain? And finally, I mean, we shouldn't have to say this, but finally, we will ban first cousin marriage.
Those heroes brave and bold, where are the men who bled and died in foreign wars untold? The men who conquered all and stood for faith and love, the men who looked to guidance from the Father up above. Where are the men of England, the heroes brave and bold, the men who stood for faith and truth, whose honor wasn't sold? England when rape had so depraved, took the daughters of our nation who forever they enslaved. What of the men of England that looked the other way? They took the country shilling, they never made their play. Where are the men of England, the heroes brave and bold, the men who stood for faith and truth, whose honor wasn't sold? Police and vice squad, they all seem quite amused, as at the hands of rape gangs our daughters were abused. The politicians blamed the lads who stood up one and all, but most of all blamed Tommy, who always took the fall. Where are the men of England, the heroes brave and bold, the men who stood for faith and truth, whose honor wasn't sold? For now we all must stand. The future of our children is still within your hand. The future not yet written for this green and pleasant land. The future of our children is still within your hand. The future not yet written for this green and pleasant land.
This morning, my friends, I asked a question. This morning. I said, where are the men of England? You're here! You're here! You're here!
Right, guys. Again, thanks for staying tuned into that. I'll do something similar tomorrow as well, because I've got a school run. I'm going to do the school run again tomorrow. I don't want to sow division. Okay, I don't want to cause problems, but I will not, and I'm not going to mention names. I'm not even going to mention parties, but I will not stand with ethnonats or people that call themselves nativists, because nativism is just another word for ethno-nationalism, and ethno-nationalism is another word for racism. And you know, a lot of my friends have been abused. A lot of my friends have been on the verge of giving up because of this, and because of all the stuff that's going on. And we've got to find a way through this, and it is extremely stressful at the minute. You know, I've been getting hits from all over the place, right? I listen to criticism where criticism is valid, and you know, people that have, you know, counseled me for years, whether it's family members or friends, you know, I will listen to their advice. I won't listen to anyone that's given me grief. I'm going to come out fighting. That's just the way I am. It's just the way I'm made up. But what I will say is this, okay? My issue is I will always stand against anyone any sniff of ethno-nationalism, any sniff of racism or nativism. That's not for me, and I'll stand against it. And to me, and this is for everyone that's been watching what's been going on for the last few weeks, Advance UK, from that conference that I just played there, Advance UK is the only option politically to save this country, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. And we've got to be very, very cautious and careful about who we jump into bed with politically, obviously. It's I think the stakes are so high. I think the stakes are so high. So, like I say, it's my, once I get something into my head, it's very difficult to get it out of my head. But I am very concerned about what's going on with the genuine far right, with the ethno-rats, and the way they've been amplified and the way they've been given a voice. And I'm always going to stand against that. But again, I'm not going to be attacking individuals. Not even going to attack parties. What I'm going to do, I'm going to examine the ideology that is leading to this, and it's nativism, it's ethno-nationalism, and it is not to do with culture. It's not really even to do with heritage. It's to do with DNA and ethnicity. And I will always stand against that. I'll always stand against that, because that is not a Christian biblical position. Okay. Okay, right. We're right. Richard Benn has said it now. I know. And I'm not yeah, I think that's, I mean, I think what's going to happen is, and again, I'm not going to mention other parties, but I am going to promote Advance. What will happen is Advance will have a purity in terms of ideology, because everything advanced, everything on to do with Advance is based on the pledge. So what I'm going to do, I'll probably do it later on today. I'm probably going to what's this? Sorry, what's that? Something the mods to be aware of. I think. Just let me know what that is, Kelly. Let me know what's going on there. Something for the mods to be aware of. But yeah, and I want to thank all the mods. Right. I want to thank Bess and Kelly and Claire Bear and Farty and Matt. And if I've missed any out, I'm going to apologise in advance. But they're the ones that just come to my head straight away. If there's any other mods there that I'm not thinking about, I apologise. But I want to thank the mods for keeping this channel so pure and clean, okay, and so much, keeping a lot of the drama away from it, right? So yeah, I am going to talk about ideology. I am going to talk about why we believe what we believe, and where that comes from, and the fact that it comes from the pledge. And I am going to very calmly, very measuredly, because we all know I can be a hothead. We all know I'm I can be knee jerk and do things very, very quickly. Where's that comment? It's a great comment that just came in. Let's see if I can see it. Sorry, where is it? In Christianity, Jesus loved all people of all skin colours and ethnicities. Spit my teeth out. Absolutely, 100%. Guys, I'm going to close that stream off there. That's 2 hours of really good content, which I think is, is great. And we'll just keep going, and we'll keep fighting the good fight. Okay, guys, see you soon.